Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another segment of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational 80 podcast. We'll be right back with today's Wednesday Wisdom guest, but we want to give a shout out to our partners, the global community of women in high school sports, Vital Signs Wall of Fame, the Florida Coaches Coalition, and We Coach. You heard me say before, these are four great organizations. You really need to add them to your network because they can do a lot for your school, your coaches, and your program. And now don't hit that fast forward button. Stay with us for about 3.5 minutes as we acknowledge our sponsors that make this all possible. Here we go. We want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive for their support of the podcast. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule a live web demonstration. See their tables and their boards in action. Their products not only generate income for your athletic department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Get started today. We also want to say thanks to Snap Mobile. Snap Mobile is the parent company for an entire suite of platforms designed to help you do your job better. You can find them all at snapraise.com. Snapraise.com. You can also find out about SnapRaise, their fundraising platform. We used it at our school, tremendous success. Coaches loved it, parents loved it. It works. And they'll actually, SnapRaise will give you your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. I don't think anybody else offers that. Go to snapraise.com. Check it out today. That's snapraise.com. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com. See how athletic directors are creating world-class content for their school social media channels. Kids today are on social media, and if you're not promoting your teams, your coaches, your kids, even yourself, you're really missing out. Go to Gipper.com, mention you heard it on the podcast, and you'll get a 10% discount. That's Gipper.com. We also want to thank Huddle. Go to Huddle.com and change the way you see the game. Huddle is going to provide your teams, your coaches, your athletes with the tools that they need to play their game at the highest level. I used Huddle as a football coach and as an athletic director, and our coaches just loved it. Go to huddle.com, see why we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users. Turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school's record boards for all the teams, for all the sports, or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their great products. When you're ready to buy, use the link vitalsignswalloffame.com/Jake, and you'll get a nice discount. Bring your school's legacy to life. vitalsignswalloffame.com. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. When you go to hometownticketing.com, they're going to show you how to set up and sell tickets at your school for all your events, not just all your athletic events, but things like concerts, school plays, dances, even graduation. And the best part, every step of the way, you'll have a dedicated client success manager that's providing you hands-on support every step of the way. That's hometownticketing.com. Simple and easy online ticketing. I want to say thanks to a brand new sponsor, District 1. I want you to go to district1.com for a better uniform experience. That's district followed by WON. And you're going to feel like you won because District 1 offers you fully custom premium uniforms. They also offer on-time delivery in 20 business days or less. And here's the cool part. You can order one or two replacements. You never need to order a full set when you only need to replace one or two. Stop dealing with late deliveries and go to district1.com. Once again, that's WON on the back end. Click the Team Gear button for your free quote, district1.com. And we want to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that allows you to take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. Athletic directors usually only hear back from the complainers, those 2%. But you also need to hear back from the 98% that love and support your program. And that's where Athletic Surveys comes in. Their survey is going to be targeted to the group or groups that you want to get feedback from. And that's a tremendously valuable tool to have when you're talking with your principal, your school board member, or that squeaky wheel parent. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Get started today. Athletic Surveys. Let them help you bring your school from good to great. Welcome back, everyone, to another segment of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. We've got one of our favorite guests with us today, Victoria Druehl. If you're new to the show, Victoria is a professional strength and conditioning specialist. She's also the founder of her own company, Health Elevated. She also does work with a company called Volt, which we're going to hear a little bit more about today, but really a rising star in the world of strength and conditioning and professional development. So, Victoria, welcome back to Wednesday Wisdom.
Thank you. You're always way too generous with your introductions. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, no, I was actually toning it down. I didn't want to intimidate people as they're listening. Okay. Well, again, Victoria and I connected a few years ago. We both actually, in a previous lifetime, worked at the same school, maybe about 10, 15 years apart. But she really is, as I mentioned, a go-to person in the area of strength and conditioning. For our listeners, we're recording this on May 10th, so it's going to be very timely when you hear this. Victoria, you and I were talking, it's the end of the school year, coaches are wrapping things up. We have state tournaments going on. Teachers are hopefully shutting down, a little bit and getting ready for next year. The idea of professional development and workshopping, improving the curriculum. I think sometimes teachers tend to take a step back from that when they hear it, but it's so very important. As we approach the end of the year and hopefully start looking to next year, from your perspective, what are some things that, let's say, a PE department chair or PE teachers can do to maybe add some professional development experiences at the end of the school year?
Yeah, look, I was a PE coordinator and a PE teacher in my previous career, and I totally sympathize at the end of the school year. It's May, graduation is right around the corner, and you're checked out, the kids are checked out. And it's really easy to kind of just close the books at the end of the year and just enjoy your summer, which you should. But I do think it is really, really important to be intentional at the end of the year, as far as, evaluating what you've done, reassessing. It's still fresh in your mind. So I do think it's really important to designate a day before everybody, a day or two, if possible, to get the team together, get the department together, and really assess what you accomplished this year, and things that you want to improve upon the next year. Coming back from summer break, you're not really going to remember all the details of the year before. If you do, amazing. But I know myself, I need it to be fresh in my head. I need to have that recollection right there as I'm reassessing and evaluating for next year. Some things that I've done in the past, that I have found have been successful and engaging at the end of the year. Just simple tools like a SWOT analysis, right? And if you haven't heard of a SWOT analysis, SWOT, that's your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. This is a great exercise to do with your department, going through, and even doing it on the individual level. I think a lot of the times you do get some more raw feedback if it's done at the individual level and then as a department level. I've done another exercise called a well, better, how. And I actually really, really like this exercise too. It goes well in a group setting and an individual setting. What went well this school year? What can we do better next school year? And then the most important piece is how. I one of my biggest pet peeves is getting in a rabbit hole of a discussion of what we could do better, but there's no plan or action items moving forward. So I think that how piece in that well, better, how model is really important. So I do think picking what works best for your department, I think athletic directors, PE chairs, I think your department better, what language might be received better for that type of an exercise. But I really strongly encourage you to power through the end of the year and take the time to evaluate and assess both at the individual level, but also at the department level, and really trying to really hone in on what are your goals for next year.
Really good stuff. The SWOT analysis, fantastic. And the well, better, how, that's the exact format that I used with my end of year or end of season coaching visits. We didn't call it an evaluation. They knew what to do coming in. What are some things that you feel proud of that you thought you did well? What are some things we can get better on, and how can I help you as your athletic director? And then mapping out a plan. We're not just going to talk about this. We're going to, be intentional about it. We're going to figure out how we can get better.
The
Great
mapping
stuff.
out, yeah, the mapping out is key though, because I know amazing athletic directors and chairs that are out there want their staff to relax over the summertime, but it really is the only opportunity to kind of do that curriculum mapping and that professional development mapping. And I think it's important to give your staff that balance of, yes, I want you to relax over the summertime and re-energize, but that's the best time of year, I think, for teachers, and assign your teachers professional development, or make them self-select before going into the summer, right? Give them that assignment, pick one, submit it. So I know that you are dedicating some time in those 2.5 months that you have off. But I think the mapping is key, and the assigning that professional development. So it's okay to delegate some tasks over the summertime. You don't want to inundate them with a ton of stuff to do, but it is okay to assign some tasks and say, hey, if I want you to work on this for the summer, and we come back for professional development at the beginning of the year, let's regroup and see what everybody collectively has come up with. So I don't shy away from delegating and assigning over the summertime, as long as it's not, super invasive to their time.
No, very true. Because summer is summer. You also, I'm glad you reiterated, what I talked about. The how and the what is so important. I think so many people get hung up on your why. What's your why? And it's certainly important. But okay, you got your why. Now, what are you going to do, and how are you going to accomplish it? I want to see some results. I want to see some movement on that why. So thanks for sharing that. You and I are both, PE people, career PE teachers, coaches, strength and conditioning, the whole thing. There's a lot of different ways that we see physical education taught around the country, even here in Florida. From your perspective as a professional in this, what are some things that the PE profession, the physical education profession, can do to improve the curriculum that we're offering our kids?
Yeah, I think you said it. You phrased that well. PE is certainly done very differently across the country and across the world. A lot of things come into play, budgets being one of the biggest ones. But I think across the board, in many conversations that I've had, I think a lot of PE curriculums or departments really struggle with grading and evaluating their curriculums. A lot of schools go pass fail. Some schools give a grade, some don't give a grade at all, some it's optional. I think everywhere, everybody has their own layout for what that's going to look like. I'm happy to see that PE has taken an upswing again, and has been inserted back into a lot of curriculums. But really that grading and evaluative piece tends to be a sticking point for a lot of departments. It's kind of like, people aren't sure how to grade, how to weigh it. How do you evaluate? Everybody is vastly different. Everybody has different abilities and capabilities. How do we come up with a standard to grade and assess our students? And it tends to be very subjective. And I think a lot of PE teachers would agree. the PE grade is relatively subjective. And that becomes a little bit tricky because there's a lot of room for error. There's a lot of room for conversation in there when talking to parents and students. It just becomes a little bit messy when it's too subjective, is what I've found, right? Are they compliant? Did they put in effort? Well, how are we measuring compliance and how are we measuring effort? It's kind of hard to do that. So it's been my mission the past several years in working with PE departments is how can we make PE a little bit more objective? There's always going to be a subjective piece to it, but how do we make that more objective? And you don't want to go on the extreme opposite end of that where we're just grading based on scores or tests, because that too is not necessarily I think the correct or the accurate way to assess, using a standardized test and saying, well, this kid's in the 90th percentile, so they get an A. This kid's in the 50th percentile, so they get a C. I don't think those are proper ways of assessing the individuals. So I've used a blended model in the past where we are using the subjective piece of compliance and effort, but also an objective measurement where it's not just saying you have to score above this in this test. If you score below this in this test, you fail. It's really just that individual progress. Are the individuals progressing from when they started to the end of the semester or the year or however long your PE classes are? So finding a way to track, take a few tests. There's a million out there and it is overwhelming. You could be sitting there sifting through assessments and physical tests all day long. Make up your own. There's no rule that says you have to follow a textbook assessment. Make up one that works for you and your department. Have fun with it. I've worked at schools where we've taken the mascot, let's just say the mascot was the Vikings, and you do the Vikings PE assessment and you make it up whatever you want. How many balls can they catch in 60 seconds? How many push-ups can they do? Whatever you want, you guys get to decide. You're in charge of that. And then at an individual level, so did that student catch 50 balls at the beginning of the year and now they caught 52 balls? Well, we just went in the right direction. And that just makes it a little bit more objective to saying, not only were they compliant and their effort was great, but we actually have an objective measurement here to say that there was improvement. So I really encourage departments to start thinking about how can I make grading a little bit more objective? How can I also make it a little bit more experiential? I think that piece in particular is where I find, with the grading, these PE departments they've lost sort of their why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Right? For me, it's very simple. We are trying to, cultivate this environment of health and wellness, and we want to provide the tools and the knowledge for these students to be able to carry on a lifetime of wellness. So, is dodgeball the effective way to do that? I'm not sure. Are there aspects of dodgeball that I think, could carry forward? Maybe if you read between the lines a little bit. But are your activities and your curriculums matching your why? And if that's your why, which I think for most PE teachers it is, we want them to leave our walls and be able to sustain a life of health and wellness and make great choices, then I think there really needs to be an assessment as to, okay, how do we at the end of the year know that our students have retained the knowledge and are able to go out into the world and live a healthy lifestyle? And that's a really hard question to evaluate. That would be an amazing long-term study for somebody to do out there, is take all of your graduates and your alums and see, did it carry over, 5, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, did that happen? But I would take this time really to assess, okay, what's in our curriculum? How are we evaluating if that information if they're retaining any of that information? Because to me, that's the most important piece, right? So I don't think we should treat PE any differently than science and math and history. We test to see if they retained. So we should be doing the same thing in PE. Are we testing to see if they have retained any of the knowledge that we've given them? And I think that experiential piece, is crucial, right? I think students nowadays, especially, are trying to understand the practicality of what they're doing. What is the practical application of what I'm learning? Math teachers and science teachers, it's very hard for them to sit there and say, how are you going to practically apply what I'm teaching you, 5, 10 years from now? But I think we have the perfect environment to do that. So I really encourage everybody to say, okay, how can I make this the most practical way of teaching health and wellness? And if you are missing a fitness component in your curriculums, that is something you need to add in next year. That is really the piece that's going to be that longevity aspect of health and wellness. I think, teaching the skills, there's always a time and a place for that. Elementary school into some of the middle school, the team, problem solving, all of that. I think conflict resolution, amazing. We have to play games. We have to do skill development, but we also have to introduce that fitness piece. And I know some of you are like, I'm super biased, but I think it's important if we assess ourselves as teachers, what are we doing? Some of us might be playing in a rec kickball league. That's amazing. But most of us are, weekend warriors. We go to the gym. We're just trying to maintain some of the activities. And in order to maintain that lifestyle and those activities that we like to do, we have to have that fitness component. So I really think introducing some aspects of fitness, even if you don't have a facility or pieces of equipment, there are ways to do that. There are curriculums out there. Volt offers a curriculum for PE. There are ways to start introducing those aspects of fitness into your PE curriculums all the way at the youngest levels. I think PE teachers do a great job now with warm-ups and cool downs. That's definitely an aspect of fitness. But there are ways that we can start to really integrate fitness into those curriculums, because that is ultimately going to be what our students are going to gravitate towards as they get older.
Right. Well, you covered a lot of ground there. I want to touch on a couple of points. Yeah, we of course we want our physical educators to have some kind of fitness, hopefully a fitness focus in their curriculum. But if whatever your why is, if it's sports and games for you, you should be doing activities that are going to help your students to obtain mastery and competence and get better and have a way to measure improvement and measure accomplishments. And you mentioned dodgeball. As someone who grew up in that late 60s, 70s dodgeball community, I think PE teachers really missed out on it. They would always, if we were doing a basketball unit, we'd start out with basketball skills, dribbling and passing and pivoting. And, before they started us with a full game. Same thing with, softball or football or floor hockey. We'd work on in floor hockey. I remember 3 days we were working on passing the stinking puck. With dodgeball, I mean, look at all the things dodgeball does. It's throwing, it's catching, it's agility, it's cardio. I mean, it's everything. Pain management. We we never
Action.
we never did any training for dodgeball. It was just, here's the balls, go at it. And so kids that maybe hadn't developed some of those other skills, to throwing and catching particularly, they never got a chance to get better. They were always more targets than anything else. So
And
again,
and that's exactly the reason why I think we steered away from dodgeball and things like that, is because it was turning off our students to wanting to be physically active. Just like any of us, if I'm not good at it, I'm not going to want to go back and do that. If I don't feel like this environment is welcoming to me, or I feel like it's something that I can participate in, I'm going to steer away from that. So I think we have to be really intentional with, how regimented our PE curriculums are. There is an aspect of fun that is very, very, very important, because the last thing we want to do is steer our students away from this type of environment. So we really do have to meet them halfway. And just like any other classroom setting, everybody has different learning styles. Everybody has different levels of comfortability. And we have to meet those students that may not be comfortable in a team setting, or they may not be comfortable in a contact sport. That is totally normal and acceptable. We should not, punish the students that don't feel comfortable in that environment. We need to find something else for them to do, right? And so maybe that is fitness piece, or maybe that is yoga or Pilates, or vice versa. We have to meet them in between there. We have to give them something else to do, and a separate outlet. So same thing, if they're not comfortable in the weight room, they're never going to go to the weight room. We need to find ways to make them comfortable. If you don't like going for a run, well, okay, let's introduce the bike. We need to find alternatives. And I think that sometimes is missing in these curriculums, is we think everybody has to do the same thing. I think sometimes, yes, and for classroom management, of course, but we do have to find ways to customize our PE programs to make sure that everybody does feel like there's a space for them in fitness or health and wellness.
No, absolutely. I'll tell one more story and then we'll go on to the next talking point. We had a strength and conditioning coach at one of the schools I was at. He was great. He knew his stuff, but he was kind of, and he was very friendly, but he was an old school, 405 on the squat rack, chalk flying, plates banging. And many of our students, boys and girls, didn't relate to that. Long story short, we had to make change. You mentioned Volt, and I know you do a lot of work with Volt. Let's talk a little bit about that for our newer listeners. And does Volt offer any kind of physical education curriculum?
Yeah, Volt is a fitness and strength and conditioning platform. We program for all sports, all strength and conditioning plans for all sports and all fitness goals. And one of our other pieces to that is PE. We do program for PE. So we have an offering of PE curriculums. And I know that's part of the reason why I think some PE departments shy away from a fitness component. They don't feel like they're qualified. There's a level of liability and risk. A lot of teachers don't feel confident that they can teach the techniques and make sure that their students are safe. So Volt actually is a great solution to that. We do have all of our curriculums, all of our programs have very depthful and instructions, videos. You really don't need to have a fitness background per se to unroll this curriculum. So if you are looking for a way to implement fitness and your staff may not be comfortable to construct workouts or correct and do the technical aspects of lifting and resistance training, this is a great solution for you. Easy to use, very easy to use. You can print workouts. Workouts can be on their phones. It's going to essentially create your curriculum for the entire year. So whether you use it for the whole year or a semester, we can break it down by that. You can break it down by abilities within the class. I know that's something that PE teachers struggle with. You could have, students that are at a training age way higher than some students in your classroom. And how do you manage that? Volt has capabilities where it's easy to manage athletes and students that are on all spectrums of that training age. So if you are looking for something to maybe implement next year, this is a very simple tool, very user-friendly for your teachers. I know that's another piece of trying to manage your departments. You don't want to throw too many softwares or too many new tools, but really this is a very easy tool. It's right there for you. You could put all the workouts in for the week, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many you want. And it will provide videos and instructions. And then the other piece to that is it also provides that objectivity to that grading that we had talked about earlier. So if you have this software, your whole class is on it, and 5 of the kids are on one program, 5 of the kids are maybe working towards just general fitness. Maybe you have a couple athletes in your class that want to work towards sports performance. They can all be on different programs, and it's going to safely progress them. So you don't have to do any of that guessing. We have an AI that is capable of safely progressing all of the athletes at their own paces. So everybody is working at different levels, and you can actually see the progress from when the first time that student did an exercise to the end of the semester, end of the year, the last time they did that. So you don't even have to come up with an assessment or evaluative metrics to do, we're going to do that for you. So we already have that built in, and you can add your own metrics to it if you want. You know, like we had talked about, your department comes up with 3 tests that they like to do. You can add those into the system. And that way you can now say to, dean of students or a mom or a dad and say, hey, look, this is amazing. Your student, your child has started here and now they're here, and that comfortability has gone up. We can see that they've done X amount of workouts, or I can track and say, we were projected to do 40 workouts this year, but Johnny only did 30. So that's an objective measurement that now you can use towards grading. So there is an accountability feature as well as that analytics feature of tracking metrics. If you wanted to, these are all just things if you want to, they're just extra perks. But really, this, even if you are very comfortable, this is a time saver too. You are going to save a lot of time where you don't have to spend your summer writing workouts, cross-checking, or phoning a friend to see if they can do you a favor and write you workouts. You don't have to come up with anything. We've got speed and agility drills in there. We've got core circuits in there, foam rolling modalities in there. So really, that's an all-encompassing curriculum where it's not just weight room focus. We can focus on other aspects as well, other aspects of fitness that are just as important. So I really encourage you to look into it if this is something you think could fit into your department, fit into your staff. If you think, leadership would be receptive of something to this, I think this is an easy win for all PE departments out there.
Hey, you probably saw me scribbling down all those notes. This is just great, Victoria. You've given us a ton of information. I got one more question if you have some time. Nowadays, maybe the last few years, it's become much more common to, coordinate the middle school program with the upper school, the high school program. Is Volt's curriculum program, is it compatible with middle school?
Yeah, great question. I think we've had a big push over the last probably 5-10 years for long-term athletic development. And there's tons of models out there. Go do your research. I mean, we could do a whole segment on LTAD models and how to do that. But it is, if you work at a school where you have the connections and the ties to the middle school, and it's basically your feeder system to your high school, if your PE curriculums aren't talking to each other, we have a broken system. I think it's really important to, if those departments are separate, at some point now, next year, there has to be a joint conversation of if our goals at the high school are this, are what we doing at the middle school setting them up for success at the high school? And so if you're going to introduce fitness at the high school, well, we should probably start introducing it at the middle school to some capacity as well. And I know resources tend to be a little bit scarce at the middle school level, even more so than the high school level. But Volt has kind of this unique progression that can be displayed from middle school through high school. We are an app-based software, so the best functionality is to track and log your workouts on a phone. And a lot of middle schools, which I think is a great rule, not to have their phones. But what we can do is we can print workouts, but we can also change the workout so it's just body weight. We have that option where if your community may not be comfortable with introducing resistance training at the middle school level, that's fine, totally acceptable. As long as we're moving and rehearsing those movement patterns and skills, we don't need to introduce dumbbells and barbells. That's fine. We can just do body weight. So we do offer a program that's just body weight, and we can actually take the existing programs, and all we have to do is just change the settings and say we don't have any equipment, and our programs will auto adjust to just a body weight program. And I think a great way to sort of segue from middle school to high school from an implementation standpoint is print the workouts, or have the teachers just have visibility of the workouts. It's just like a guidebook for them. It's just a playbook. And then they can, just using our terminology and the way that we have workouts structured, if you want to print them and give them to the kids so they have something to look at or something to bring home, I think that's a great piece as well. And that way they get used to, like, okay, this is what workouts look like, feel like. There's a start, a middle, and an end. This is the terminology, these things called sets and reps. There's rest. This movement does this movement does that. And now we're progressing them. And then they get to the high school and now they've evolved to now, okay, well, this looks familiar. It's on my phone. The terminology, was similar to what I was using. Now I get videos. Now I get analytics. Now I get prescriptions. Now I get to see actual analytics. And so we're kind of building this base foundation for fitness and just getting comfortable in that space and doing those things to now this natural progression of, okay, I'm working towards something now. I'm seeing visible progress. And, I think it just makes sense from a long-term athletic development model standpoint to start with something, watch it progress into something. And it's a very smooth transition from middle school to high school. It's just kind of this fluid transition. So it's possible. And it takes a little bit more coordination with your middle school PE department if it's different than your high school PE department. But if you're using the same software, everybody can see what's being done at the middle school and everybody can see what's being done at the high school. So there is, there's natural communication that's happening where you don't even really have to speak if you don't want to, but you can at least have visibility of what's to come. You can prep the kids, get them excited. There's something to look forward to when they get to the high school,
Yeah, again, you talked about it, building on previous information, previous skills, a natural progression. I'm sure that high school strength coach is just going to love having a new group of freshmen. They've already been doing a version of the program with the same terminology, same concepts for a couple of years in middle school. And now, again, greater load, greater intensity, all that good stuff, more recovery too.
Yeah, there's nothing more rewarding than getting the middle schoolers that have already have, a base foundation. There's nothing more exciting and more rewarding when you get kids that you're like, yes, they know, they're excited, they're ready. They're ready. That's the piece. You don't have to waste a lot of time, kind of regressing and spending all the time. They're just ready to rock and roll. Now you have 4 more years to develop and refine those skills. There's nothing more exciting for the high school strength coach than to get the incoming freshmen that are prepared.
And you speak from experience. You know exactly.
I might.
Victoria, always great hanging out with you. Thanks so much for sharing with our listeners. If somebody wants to reach out, find out more about Volt, or just pick your brain a little bit, and listeners, you got a tremendous resource here that you should add to your network. What's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can find me there, Victoria, my last name, Druehl, or shoot me an email if you have any questions about Volt implementation, questions about how to curriculum map. The best way to get a hold of me via email is going to be victoria@voltathletics.com.
Okay. Victoria Druehl, thanks so much for sharing again on Wednesday Wisdom. All the best with the wrap up of spring and the coming summer months.
Yes. Happy summer, everybody. Thank you, Jake. Thanks for having me.
For listeners, we do this every week, and we also upload the Zoom videos to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening. Come back next Wednesday for another Wednesday Wisdom segment, and just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Before we go, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsors who help make this happen. These are programs that I've used as a head coach or an AD, and you should use them too. We want to say thanks to Gipper. Create custom content for your school social media channel. It's so easy, even I can use Gipper. Go to Gipper.com. If you're not selling your tickets online for your athletic events or your other school events, you're really missing out. Go to hometownticketing.com, a leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. That's hometownticketing.com. Our newest sponsor, District One, that's districtwon.com. Check them out. Fully custom uniforms. Order them one at a time instead of having to order an entire set to replace one or two. And on-time delivery in 20 days. That's districtone.com. We also want to thank Huddle. As a football coach, I loved Huddle. As an athletic director, I loved it even more because it helped our coaches, our kids, and all of our athletes. Go to huddle.com to find out more. Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. You've heard me say before, one of the best purchases I ever made was a Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule a live web demonstration today. We want to thank Snap Mobile. You can find out more about the entire Snap suite of platforms by going to snapraise.com. Their fundraising platform, they're going to give you your money before you actually start your fundraiser. Does anybody else do that? Go to snapraise.com. We also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. If you're looking for the coolest way to display your school's Hall of Fame or the record boards for all of your sports, for all the events, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. And finally, Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. athleticsurveys.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time on Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast.